The reason I'm here is because I have a true love for the franchise, the field of franchising, the whole franchise industry. I just think it's a wonderful path to business ownership. And I earned my merit badge starting in 1996 as a Kids Are Kids Academy franchise owner. And there are lots and lots of Kids Are Kids Academies in Texas. So if you're from the area, you've probably seen those before. But I was in Orlando, Florida. And then I exited, as we say, in 2012. I enjoyed every single minute of franchise ownership. I attribute that to a lot of things, some of the things I'm going to share with you today, but I especially attribute it to having a very solid and real relationship with my franchisor. So that's not an official secret and habit, but from my personal experience, it made a huge difference in some of the opportunities that I was able to explore. So the first thing I want to tell you about is, if you look at these pictures, so this is sort of looks like a scrapbook, right? And just to kind of paint the picture of franchise ownership is not an easy journey by any stretch. And I remember the very first time when I thought, am I going to be able to do this? I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this. And the year was 1998, and I had just walked out of my apartment with my 3-year-old son in tow. Hey guys. And there he is. There's me. And I was walking out of an apartment because I'd sold my house and I'd cashed out my retirement plan in order to come up with the down payment for the Kids Are Kids franchise. It started with, you'll hear this number, and when you're talking to franchisors, it's the initial fee was $37,500, but the whole amount that I needed was $240,000. So I think there are so many entry price points today. It's wonderful. My heart was set on early childhood education, and it was my second career, and it was the right choice for me. So here I was with my son walking out of the apartment, heading to the construction site, which you see here, and he stops and goes, "Oh no, Mom." I said, "What?" And he said, "Look, somebody stole your hubcaps again." And so, so this apartment complex that we lived in, it was perfectly fine. However, apparently a Mazda 626 had attractive hubcaps. I don't know, but that was the third time since I had lived there for about a month. And who really cares that someone steals your hubcaps? It's not a big deal, but it is a big deal if you're trying to sign people up on pre-enrollments for an early childhood development center. You want them to trust you, and having not even seen the school built, So here we were back to getting go back to hubcap heaven and get the hubcaps. The whole point of that story is there are lots of days that are really challenging. Hello, thanks for coming. Lots of days that are really challenging. By far, most of them are extremely rewarding, full of wonderful relationships, full of daily challenges that you'll enjoy. And definitely you can make some nice money. And so with that, I want to go ahead and go through 5 of the secrets and habits that I found, not just in retrospect, but during the time that I thought were the most successful things that I could do that complemented the already given franchisor processes. So your franchisor will have many, many systems that have to do with operational aspects and branding, including, maybe how you hire to paying your royalties and a whole lot of things in between. The context to secret and habits is about planning, focusing, and acting with, I say, unwavering discipline about some of the more softer sides of being a successful franchisee. And so by softer sides, I'm talking about ways that you can be competitive, ways that you can engage in the community, ways that you can build brand loyalty and loyalty amongst your clients, because you are running your own business. And with the franchisor's support, you can probably do a lot of new and creative things. But the point is, those are softer areas where your personality and the way that you operate are going to have a play. And so those are the things that I focused on in my business and that I'm going to share with you. So I use this little term, method management. I certainly didn't coin that phrase, but what I found was that the more methodical I was towards community engagement. And I'm going to give you detail. The more methodical I was towards building client loyalty and so on, made my life so easy, you know, air quotes, easy. But what it really did was it allowed me to have the joy and the fun and the pleasure of business ownership without running around trying to reinvent and put out fires and all of that. So I really believe in it, and so that's why I share it with you. And so Secrets and Habits represents the most important opportunities in my mind that support differentiation. I'm not saying aside from your existing brand, but from some of your competitors and other, you know, forces that may be at play, and of course, growth and profitability. So here we go with secret and habit number 1, planning your numbers and the growth will follow. 2 things. One is John Maxwell, you may recognize that name. He's a guy that's written over 70 books on being successful. He's kind of old school, but it's really, really good stuff. So I recently got my hands on a book called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. One of the things he focuses on the most is know your numbers. Know all your numbers. You know, I'm not just talking about food cost or what the tuition rate is in my case or the payroll. Knowing all your numbers inside and out, and they're going to change from time to time, and you're going to notice that they change because you're going to know your numbers. The goal would be on Friday afternoon when you're seeing how much money you made to know, that's off by about $1,500. What's wrong here? That's right, that's what's off. So there's a lot of things that are very important about knowing your numbers. But I mentioned to another one of the audience members earlier that I teach at Rollins College in Winter Park. And it's so fun, and it's such an honor to teach young people. But the coolest part for me is I get exposed to some new things or some old things with new twists to them. So this is one of them, and I'm going to share this with you. I haven't ever shared this before, but I'm sharing it with you because I do think knowing your numbers are so important. And here's why. It's all about situational awareness so that you could, as I said, walk up, look at your books, look at your manager, and so on, and know something's off and I think I know what it is. So there's 3 levels to knowing your numbers. The ability to perceive in the environment. I know something's off. Level 2 is to comprehend what that means to your business. If this number's off, then likely it's coming from here, or this is then going to be thrown off. I'll give you an example from my field. If my waiting list was not where it needed to be, then I knew in 6 weeks down the road, because of normal attrition, that I was going to be having a drop of $2,500 a week or whatever it was going to be. So knowing your numbers that well to comprehend the meaning and then to be able to project the status of those in the future. That's why knowing your numbers is really important. So enough about that. So once you do, planning your profits. What that means is that you're going to take those softer areas that I named that we're going to go to in depth, loyalty, engagement, recognition, things that are going to help you grow and have a rock solid business, and design your monthly plan and quarterly plan and annual plan using those numbers. So once you know your numbers and you decide this is how much money I want to make this year, that means this is how much money I need to generate in revenue this year, then you go and build your programs, your loyalty programs and so on. And we're going to get into that. But that's the importance of having a methodology to apply these things. And then I say this, know the value of your best client. So I knew what the value of my best client was. It was about $450 a week, and it was somebody that had 3 kids. That was my best client. So I developed programs to draw that same best client in. I developed programs to convert somebody that wasn't in my sweet spot into the sweet spot. And you can do this in different energies, and we'll talk in different energies, in different industries, and we'll talk in a little bit about building your creative confidence. But knowing what your sweet spot client is, drawing in people that are the same, or having programs that help you to convert those into sweet spot clients. So here's just a little example. I try to share some of the things I did. So this is, you see it says Sweet 100 Club. So this is my sweet spot client, one of them. I had a couple. Hey, and it was this. I knew that if I had somebody walk in the door with their infant at 6 weeks or 2 months, that if I did the right things and honored my commitments to them and kept their child safe and educated and ran my business healthy, then by the time they left, after graduating from pre-kindergarten, this little medallion was worth about $50,000. That is the sweet spot for a family that's only going to have one child. It's a different way of looking at your business, long versus short term. And so when they graduated from voluntary pre-kindergarten, I recognized them in various ways, but they got this little medallion, and it was kind of a big deal. And so we called it the Sweet 100 Club, because when they first started at Kids Are Kids, they would start in Sweet, S-U-I-T-E, 100. So when I first realized at 5 years, oh my gosh, we have children that have been here since they were born, that's when that went, that became something that I thought was well worth recognizing, even during the graduation ceremony and so on. So that's one example, stimulating yourself for other examples for your own business. So the next secret and habit is, number 2, is know who you're leading and then lead strategically. So leadership comes in many forms, and we hear a lot about leadership, and there's a lot on the internet and all that. So this is not that kind of leadership. It's not about body language and being a thought leader. This is about leading your company, and strategically leading your company. Because if you're a franchise owner or a multiple franchise owner, there's only so much of you to go around. So it's really important to be strategic in this area. So I write this thing about, seriously, who is driving the bus? Because I think I have a copy of it in one of those articles. So I'll tell you a little leadership story. My very first opportunity, again, air quotes, opportunity, to display, some serious kind of fearless leadership came early on. And one kind of leadership that I'll talk a little bit more about is unplanned leadership. And sometimes those are the strongest and the best and have the highest impact. So I had an employee come to me on Friday afternoon as I'm just thinking, I made it through another week, because again, this was early on. I'd probably been open 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. I'm in my office. I'm sure I'm doing payroll or something. And he says, Miss Christy, this is my last day. It was Mr. George. You can call me Miss Christy if you want to, but. So Mr. George told me it was his last day. And I had recruited Mr. George from another Kids Are Kids. I did it right, 6 months or so ahead in advance, because Mr. George had a really key position. Mr. George drove the bus. He was my bus driver. Yeah. So Mr. George comes to me on Friday afternoon, Miss Christy, this is going to be my last day. Of course, I thought, okay, seriously? Who's going to drive the bus? In my head. I figured out I wasn't going to talk him out of it. And I said, okay, you know what? This conversation's over, because I have to go. I got to find someone to drive the bus, or else I'm learning how to drive the bus. So I decided in that moment that, I was told by the franchisor that it'd be a good idea to get your CDL, commercial driver's license. And, he was right, and I guess it's now. So I headed to the DMV in the afternoon, 2:30 or 3 o'clock, got in line, pulled the ticket, read the book in line. You got to have the passenger endorsement, the air brakes. I mean, there was a lot to it. But I thought, okay, I am a good test taker. I can do this. So sure enough, I took the test. In the meantime, I'd called someone to give me some training over the weekend, write me a permit to be able to drive temporarily, 48 hours, which was fine to do that, so that Monday I could go in and get my permanent license. So I walked in Monday morning at 6:30 a.m. because the first run was 6:45, and the staff is going, who's driving the bus? Who's driving the bus? I said, I'm driving the bus. I pulled up, honk, honk. The kids get on. The parents are like, woo, woo. So It was hard, and it was exciting, and it was a challenge, and it is no different than some of the ones that you'll have. There was an article in the Franchise Times magazine this past month on a lady that owns some Rita franchisees. Do y'all know that one? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, yeah. And so she has an article, she did an interview with another business she was associated with, how she walked in one Father's Day just to shake hands and, say hello to her staff, and the next thing you knew, she was cooking all day long, making omelets, because she had kind of gotten into it with the omelet cooker. So had I been a better business owner, would I have known that he was looking? I don't know, but there I was, and those were the cards I was dealt. However, after that, I changed my whole process, and from then on, I had not only me, but several bus drivers. So when you come across a challenge, one of the cool things is you're gonna learn how to do it better and be a better owner. So I say here, start by defining who you are leading and consider all your stakeholders. That's who you're leading. You don't need to lead the world. You don't need to necessarily go and do something that's going to take a lot of your commitment, especially in the first 3 or 4 years, 2 to 3 years. But you need to define who you're leading and then lead strategically between your clients and your community and your staff. I did a little bit of board work for the public TV station. It was great. Didn't take a lot of energy, but yet I enjoyed it. And a couple of other things. But an unexpected opportunity to leave is the one I showed you. In 2003, I had a planned opportunity to lead, and that's being strategic. You're gonna plan some of your opportunities, and that was an expansion that I did. And then 2008, something was needed. My business was suffering because it had gotten to the point where it was big enough that it was very difficult for me to manage it as well as it needed to be managed. And I had someone steal a whole bunch of money from me. And obviously that made me change some of the ways I thought about my business. But these are all real things that can happen. They don't have to happen, but they can happen. But the point is, again, it's opportunities to show great leadership and show yourself what kind of leader you can be. So in 2008, I hired a general manager, a true general manager. And so as franchise owners or franchisors, we all know it's that step that you're taking right before you're getting ready to grow, or right before you need to hire that person that's gonna do this particular job really well. That's one of the hardest steps. So, in my case, I learned that, a really tough way. So I say all three are needed in order to build loyalty, trust, and engagement with the community. And again, those are three really important components. Oh, okay, so this is kind of cool. This is the next secret and habit, which is on maintaining your true competitive advantage. That should be number 3. So the reason, you might say to yourself, who is she to talk about competition? We don't know if she's competitive or not. And I know if one of my friends, for example, asks me if I'm competitive, I might go, I'm not sure. It depends on what area of life I'm talking about. But I did learn, when it comes to your business, you sure as heck better be competitive. Because if you build it and they come, the goal and the trick and the key is to keep them coming back. Because someone else is going to build new and pretty, and you don't want them to go to new and pretty, you want them to stay with you. So I think I learned a thing or two about competition because I was first, and within about 8 years, that is just about 50% of the competitors that grew up around me. And clearly I had picked a great area with the help of my franchisor to build my center, but all the competitors thought the same thing. So in order for me to stay where I wanted to stay with my numbers, I had to incorporate some things that I hadn't incorporated heretofore to stay competitive. And at some level, it's not the franchisor's responsibility to help you with that, because they're growing in some areas where you may have competitors in your area that aren't existing in another area. And so you have to take not only responsibility for that, but you have to manage that as well. And these were some really excellent competitors that had grown up around me. And I'm gonna give you 3 specifics about being competitive. But my first one is, I love to share this slide. I actually just put it together a couple weeks ago because you recognize the Wawa logo. And Racetrack, I think, is all over the country for the most part. You may not recognize this fella. This is George Jenkins. He's the founder of Public Supermarkets. And you might, does anybody know Public Supermarkets? Okay, it's a big chain in the Southeast, you know, just a great grocer. But of course, they have Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, you know. I'm not that geared into that particular industry, but there's a lot of competition for grocery stores now. It's changed a lot. So I was really intrigued when I saw in my Orlando Sentinel an ad that said, if you buy $50 worth of groceries at Publix, it was just a little nothing thing. And I thought, well, yeah, who doesn't? Then you can buy a gift card from, these are just 2, they had several listed, from one of these stations right there at Publix for $40. So I'm like, well, dang. I don't know if it's because gas is so cheap now that it particularly got my interest, but I thought, you know, I could pretty much just fill my car up with that. So I just thought that was so cool. I wanted to see how it played out, if I really tore this out and I went with my $50, you know. Well, so sure enough, you know, I've done it 2 or 3 times. And so the reason I put this up here is, well, there's a few reasons. One is, I don't own a franchise today, but if I did write it down because I thought I could share it. But I would have written that down in my little book that I always carried around when I saw something in another industry that I thought was a really cool idea, and to see if there was some way I could incorporate it. So incorporating by borrowing things that you see in other industries is brilliant. Why not? So of course, we're not saying, regardless of your field, that you incorporate gas gift cards, but there's something that you can do that involves a partnership. So that's another level of being competitive, is partnerships. We see it all the time. I mean, what did you think the first time you saw a Baskin and Robbins and a Taco Bell? You know? Did someone laugh? Yeah, I thought, wow, okay, I love them both, so this is kind of cool. But usually I have a couple hours in between, you know. But so George Jenkins, rolling up his sleeve there, is also displaying great leadership. So when it comes to maintaining a true competitive advantage, there are 3 or 4 things you can do. That's a lot to read, so I hope that's the way it's duplicated in your notes. But before you do anything, it's vitally important, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's vitally important that you do a competitive analysis every year. And so however you do that, you know, with a friendly, open communication with your competitor or competitors, or you do a secret shopper kind of a thing, or you just go to dinner at the neighboring, you know, competitive restaurant, including non-franchise units, right? But you have to do a competitive analysis. And again, method management, you kind of do it at the same time every year. So maybe you do that in October. And I got to the point where I had a friendly enough relationship with a couple of the competitors that we just exchanged price lists, you know, because we're both going to raise our prices, so we exchange price lists. But that comes with time. And then you're going to revisit your plan annually. So what I'm going to lay out for you are some ways that you can be truly competitive and then maintain your competitive edge by reviewing it every year. So it's not a stagnant state of being, it's dynamic. So you have to be dynamic to address it. So one thing is incorporate hard to duplicate elements within your core business that add value to your clients. And I'm not talking about changing the brand or adding something that, you know, makes no sense. I'm talking about I'll give you some ideas in a second. I want to finish this thought. But I say here, practice creative thinking. One of the things we talk about in my business entrepreneur class, and this is sort of a new thing for me, a new way for me to be thinking, is that, so people have told me, oh, you're pretty creative, Christy. You know, they used to tell me that. My staff would tell me, well, you're creative. And I'd be like, you guys can do it too. So it involves some brainstorming. It involves some silliness, it involves some borrowing, different things. But brainstorming and being creative are really important traits and skills to develop as a business owner, because you'll see things that will stimulate, and then you'll start layering your levels of loyalty that you've developed in your programs, or competitiveness that you've developed. So I'm encouraging you to think creatively, but, and then I mentioned borrow heavily. Franchisor blessing is important. I put here, and I'm gonna tell you what I did, but I put here McDonald's and Freshii. So we all know McDonald's added breakfast, and that's an iconic franchise. And of course, the stock market thought initially, oh, this is gonna be not good for them. And even the owners thought, how are we ever gonna do that? Because, you know, I still do my secret shopping. I go into McDonald's and I go into other places and I say, how'd that work out? Well, at first it was really hard, but now it's great. Okay, so this is $9 an hour employee saying, first it was really hard, but now it's great. So McDonald's did that. That was to help them stay competitive. You don't need me to tell you that, I know that. Really shrewd move. Big, that's going big. Freshii is one of our fellow franchise companies. I don't know if they're here right now, but I read an article in Franchise Times, and it was a little interview with the owner, and I cannot think of his name right now. But what he does is, as he goes around and works with his franchisees, and developing new ones and so on, he's also going to different restaurants in the area, kind of the cool, hip, different ones, because his niche is millennials in part, people that want new, cool, hip. I want that too, but he makes a point of going around to restaurants and doing that, and then he brings it back. He brings it back to his team and he says, hey, we're gonna start having tapas, or whatever it is. So he stays fresh and keeps changing. And so his clients like that. That's what they want. So something that adds value to your clients. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but again, please do know I'm not talking about doing something that is going to change the brand or the core basis of the business. But what I did was I built a second building, and that was big, but I share that with you because two reasons why I did it. I got lucky and I bought a big piece of land. It was my fourth site, so it wasn't really luck. It was hard and it was a lot of due diligence. Because I had a big piece of land, I was able to expand my center. And so in 2003, that was that second leadership point, I purposely decided to expand the school. I did not do one thing without talking to my franchisor, and he was wonderful. He said, you know, Pat Vinson, such a sweetheart. Sure, you know, I love you like a daughter. I'm a little nervous about it, but keep talking to me, or something like that. And so I came up with a plan, of course, that complemented, and told him why I wanted to do it. The two reasons I wanted to do it. One was I got tired of saying no to my clients. No, I'm sorry, we don't do that. No, I wish we could, but we're full. I got tired of not addressing the part-time market for preschools, or the family that was ready to have a second child and mom or dad was going to stay home for a few months and they only needed part-time. I didn't like that. These are my loyal clients, and I'm saying, no, we don't do that. So with more space, I could do that. But let's not kid ourselves. The real reason I did it was that slide back there. The competition was coming. I didn't want to lose my clients. So I expanded for that reason. So think big and think small about being competitive. That was a biggie I did, but guess what? It sustained me for another 10 years until I was ready to exit. But thinking small and doing other things will also definitely sustain you. And then a year goes by and you're doing something else. So the next two I'll do real quickly, but incorporate elements that require an investment of time and ingenuity and that add value to your clients. It could be anything like education for your staff. It could be some clever way that you not only greet the clients, but that you reward them for their loyalty. It could be many different things, but it's an investment of time, sometimes their time and your time, and maybe the time that you spent developing the program. Loyalty programs, they can be, as we know, kind of obnoxious if you've got to keep pulling out, you know, whatever, but there's different ways to do it. I had one where they didn't have to track anything. I tracked everything. When it was their anniversary, my manager greeted them, happy anniversary, here's your this and your free this and that, and we're so glad you're here for another year, yay. So make it work for your clients. And in any business, I think that's important. And I put new creative pricing structure. I was talking to a franchisor today about the way that they price their, the way that they get their royalties. It's a different kind of a way. And I said, that is really so cool. So new and creative pricing structures. A lot of people will respond to that, and you may engage them with a survey or something like that. And I put Massage Envy on there because, I'm trying to think exactly what that was. Yeah. Oh, I know why. So Massage Envy, I've been a client for a long time, and that's kind of a competitive spot now. There are a lot of different kinds of massage types of places that are coming out. So for those of you that may not know it, they added facials. So now I can get a massage and a facial. And when they first did that, I thought, I didn't see that coming. But now I think, pretty darn smart, because the facial places do massages. Why wouldn't they do that? So that was the corporate office doing something. But if you're having a good relationship with your franchisor, believe me, they're going to want your ideas. And maybe you are the franchisor, and you're going to be open, obviously, to new ideas. But that's why I put Massage Envy on there. And incorporating elements that make you distinctive in your market. So I'm talking about your local market, things that make you distinctive. Something about convenience that you're adding for your clients. Some sort of element of surprise, pleasant surprise. Oh, this is so nice. We really like that you do this every month. This is great. We can bring our children in and we get caramel popcorn whatever it is, every month. We know that you're going to do that. And then I put employee engagement, because I don't know about you, but I don't care to go and do business with anybody that isn't good to their employees and their employees don't enjoy working there. So engaging your employees in your competitive strategy, I think, is really important too. So now we're getting down to the last two. And so this is kind of a little bit of a weird one. It says what to do when bad things happen, because they will happen. So I don't say that to scare anybody off. I just say that because you have to be prepared for that, and things will happen. There definitely are things you can do to mitigate, prevent, and keep things from happening. But when you're first starting off, when I was first starting off, some things are hard to avoid. For example, there are acts of God, right? So when I opened, there were 3 hurricanes that came pretty quick back to back, and cash flow was, oh man, that didn't help. But you get through it. I already mentioned I had someone steal from me, and I had news crews twice, but I put that up there because there's national examples everywhere, and you guys are astute business people or you wouldn't be in here. So you probably listen the same way I listen when I hear about Bluebell ice cream, for example, having the salmonella issue, or Chipotle, corporate franchise darling, corporate darling, fast casual. They're still in the news for that. So that's food. Food is tricky, but now with so many different kinds of services that our industry is involved in, all kinds of things. I mentioned massage and childcare, and there's elder care, and there's service, there's lots of opportunity for things to happen. So I think it's incumbent on our industry to really be having the conversation with the franchisors and others that are similar in your area to prevent those because we know how the news cycles can be. I also saw, those are things that happened in my school, and because it was a school, but those cyber crimes, we're all concerned about our security and our identity security. I read an article, I think I have it right here. Yeah. So this was a Blue Cross, Blue Cross Blue Shield Excelis Healthcare affiliate. A cyber breach, this was in September, hit 10 million customers. And there was a quote in here that says, don't kid yourself, because that might have happened, but then they have entrance to the doctor's offices and all those other things. So, depending on what your field is, I say, go ahead and make that short list of the 3 or 4 worst things that can happen. And when I'm done with this, I'll tell you what my worst nightmare was. A couple of the others happened, but my worst nightmare never did happen. So I say my franchisor had it right. Pat Vinson said, Christy, what you want to do is develop relationships fast. Because when you have a new client, you have not a whole lot of time to develop a really important relationship. And the better and more genuine they are, and of course we're talking genuine, that's your best protection against problems happening with your clients. Some other things that's not going to prevent. But I truly do believe that. I had 2 situations that turned into something not good. One was involving a bus, again, another bus story. But I call this one the Stingray Boy. And the Stingray Boy didn't want to get on the kids bus after school like he was supposed to do, but he was a brand new student. It was an after-school program. He was in kindergarten. He was so cute. And he wanted to get on the Stingray bus because for the last 2 or 3 years, his brother had been getting on the big yellow Stingray bus. So he cut around his kindergarten teacher. He didn't get on our bus, which we knew he wasn't, but his brother said he thought he went homesick. And the next thing you know, he's on the Orange County, Florida bus, getting dropped off his neighborhood. But of course, nobody's home because he's supposed to be with me. And I get a call from one of my former clients. She says, Christy, this is Sharon. She says, this is kind of odd, but there's a little boy here, and he says he's supposed to be at Kids Are Kids. I said, what? She said, and this is the first day of school. We always know the first day of school, all hands on deck. He's supposed to be with you, is what he says. So I looked him up, and sure enough, he was supposed to be with us. Bus driver, no. Christy, his brother said he was sick. He was homesick. Or his dad came and picked him up. So I got in my car and went and picked him up. In the neighborhood, he's wandering in the neighborhood. Called Dad. I asked if everything's okay. I got him. I'm doing my investigation. And anyway, long story short, there was no getting around that situation that it was going to be tough. I should have brought some water up here. Just thinking about the Stingray Boy. But anyway, turned out Mom and Dad were having some difficulties personally, and that's always part of it. You don't know what your clients are going through. But it didn't matter. It was my responsibility to get that boy back to Kids Are Kids and on that bus. So I definitely took it and took it and took it. And then at some point, I finally needed to say, if there is anything you can think of that I can do to help us get past this, I definitely want to know what that is, because I'm flat out. So, and I promise you, I said it just that nice with a smile on my face, but it didn't matter. His wife called the news station. The next thing I know, there's news cameras. So trying to explain that whole thing, it wasn't pretty, but we got through it. So the Stingray Boy, here's the bottom line. Had I had known his family for more than just really no time at all, I guarantee you that could have been averted. And how many others did we avert because we had good relationships? I won't tell the story, but the only other really bad thing that happened, of course that's not horrible, but it wasn't pleasant, also involved another client that I hadn't had the opportunity to get to know because she came during the Christmas holidays. And I was there around a lot during the holidays. So 2 things. One is we changed our whole bus plan. Now we talk to parents if a child isn't on the bus. And we don't let new people start during the holidays. It's not good. We're not our best. Done. So you learn from those. But bad things can happen. And you just need to be prepared. So I say this about being accessible to everyone. When you first buy a franchise, you might have a little diva thing, just a little bit. I got over that really, really, really quick. And I had my cell phone number and my home phone number right smack on the front door. This many times probably I got phone calls. That was it, 15 years. But there it was. And my staff would tell them, Miss Christy's number is right there on the door. If you really want to call her, she'd be delighted to take your call. So be accessible to everyone. Plus you'll hear things from your clients and your staff. You'll learn things. And then for sure, your franchisor is going to be a wealth of information and guidance about protocols and the things that they have already developed. But your other great resource are your insurance agents. And if they're not a great resource, then find ones that are, because that is an extremely competitive industry, as we know. And that is a way that many of them will differentiate themselves from others. They'll even come in and do training. So depending on what your list is. And then whatever does happen, when it does happen, you just, obviously, you want to get right out in front of it. So as soon as this happened with the little boy, I'm not saying to anybody we're hiding this. I'm saying, parents, starting today, if your child isn't with us, please do expect a phone call from us. If you're going to pick them up, please do. You know, so we did email, we did Facebook, we did this, we did that. There were, 8 different ways to communicate. And you should have that too if you're in a similar kind of industry. But the point is, get out in front of it, and then once you've solved the issue and decided what is going to be the best policy now, communicate that. And I put there, a crisis PR agency. I know we have at least 2 franchisors in the room. My franchisor had a PR agency on call for that time when there is something that happens. So I suspect yours would too. And then last, I have commit annually to triple community engagement. So that is a little phrase I coined. I don't know how memorable that'll be, but I call it triple community engagement because they're just like when you're leading, there's different groups and different types of leadership. There's different kinds of communities that you're going to engage with, but you got to commit annually. And so I'm going to go back beating my drum. You're so much better off if you have a methodology for applying these things, that you plan it in the beginning and that you have it laid out. It'll save you a lot of stress, and it'll save you a lot of time and headaches too. And it makes it easy to say no to someone when they say, hey, how would you like to? You go, you know what? We're already set for this year, but I'd love to learn more about it for next year. Because if you're engaged with your community, you're going to get asked to do a lot of things, but it takes a little while to get there. But your community is your local market, your clients, and your staff. And I maintain you need all 3 for consistent and strong growth. And here again, I'm saying it doesn't have to cost a lot. It can be creative, and you can brainstorm. I mean, there's a realtor in our hometown, Winter Park, Florida. He writes a column. There's financial planners that write columns. We can do the same kind of things. There are a lot of paper publications still floating around. You can do the same thing. And then some way of giving back, of course, as a franchise, as the industry really promotes that. And now that I'm working with millennials and in my teaching, that is vitally important to them. So it's vitally important to your success as well. I say here, do that, and do something that aligns with your core business. It makes a lot of sense that way, and it'll create some synergies, and that's what you're looking for. I even say here about career development and board work. So you can engage with your community by helping your staff members have a career development plan or education. You can do board work. I mentioned what I did that didn't take a whole lot of time, but it got me in front of the community. It put me as a community leader. And I didn't do that the first year. I mean, I'm talking more like the 3rd year, the 4th year, stuff like that. When you really want to position yourself as, not only do I love what I do and this community, but I'm willing to give some of my time and energy towards it. That's one of the biggest things we can possibly do. And then looking back is a key way that you can also build community engagement. I parked just on my way here in Park and Bark at the airport, the Orlando airport. And why did I park in Park and Bark? They sent me a text, or maybe it was an email, and it said, it's our 10-year anniversary. And they had Valentine's all over it, and then they had the Dalmatian dog, and it said support small business. And I'm like, 10-year anniversary, Park and Bark? Who knew? Guess where I parked? Park and Bark. So celebrate anniversaries. Your anniversary, people are going to be happy for you. In many different ways you can celebrate that. And recognizing the loyalty of your clients. And if you own a restaurant, you can recognize restaurant patrons. Just see me afterwards. I have a million ideas. and anniversaries. You know, their anniversary, but more about your employees' anniversaries. So we had pens for every year that someone was with us a different year. They traded them in, but then they got a different garnet or whatever the thing was, and they were really pretty, and they loved them, and they wore them on their uniforms. So, but recognize the anniversaries. That is engaging with your community, your clients, and your staff. And then guess what? They're wearing that uniform out, right? And oh, you've been with them, yeah. And then and then you have a whole conversation. The next thing you know, somebody comes to you because so and so said this was a great place to eat or shop, or because they ran into somebody in Target. And then I already mentioned be strategic, what aligns with your core business. Okay, so I don't pretend to have told you anything you probably haven't heard before, may already know, may have heard 10 times. But if you're anything like me, sometimes I have to hear something 2 or 3 times, or it has to be just the right day and the right time. So my hope is that at least something here has popped out to help you make your decisions and build your business and retain and regain maybe your motivation and invigoration. But we talked about 5 secrets and habits, and there are many more, and you probably have some great ones yourself, which I'd love to hear. But planning your profits, and again, this is all under the umbrella of being strategic and methodology. I can't say that. Using some method management so that you're not redoing it every year. And leading strategically. Can't be everything to everybody, but you got to be strong for those that you need to be. Maintaining a true competitive advantage, which is about building layers of competition, being competitive, so that you're always one step ahead, and being expectant and prepared, and practicing triple community engagement. Now, I had to put this up. This is my very last one. So, this guy here, Mr. Native, I know that's his name, but this is the gentleman that got Boston Market to take off. So some of y'all remember when Boston Market went crazy and grew, like with Krispy Kreme did and all that. That is when franchising first got my attention. So this is the cover of a magazine that I had in my office the entire time. I still have it. And it says August 1995. But this is about the competitive secrets of America's savvy new franchisees. So I pulled it down and reread some of it before preparing this presentation. And so some of the things I shared, are definitely my stuff, but some of them are tried and true. And this gentleman, what he's saying in this magazine, the message is that if you're not in franchising now, it's a great way to have a path to business ownership. And it works in so many different areas and for so many different people. This became my real talisman, because there's an article inside about a lady that bought a Primrose franchise. Her name is Kathy Miller. Maybe I'll meet her one day. And then she actually bought a second. And I read that and I identified with her because she was in telecom and I was in telecom. And that's when I first said, you know what? I think I'm going to buy a franchise. So I share that with you because you get your inspiration all over if you are open and willing to. I'm going to walk back in front. Willing to listen to other people. So I hope for you, if you don't already own a franchise, that you're able to find something that works. And for those that are franchisors, if anything I can ever do for you, I'd be happy to. I hope that was helpful. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you.